On the Waterfront is a crime drama from 1954, directed by Elia Kazan and written by Bud Schulberg. The movie stars Marlon Brando, and it features Carl Malden, Lee Cobb, Rod Steiger, Pat Henning, and the film debut of the lovely Eva Marie Saint. The storyline of the movie evolves when the Waterfront Crime Commission is about to hold public hearings on union crime and the infiltration of the underworld into its setting. As workers are turned against each other, Terry Malloy inadvertently participates in the murder of a fellow longshoreman named Joey Doyle. Union boss Johnny Friendly orchestrates the murder along with other illegal activities at the dockside. All this aided by Terry's brother Charlie. Terry begins to feel his conscience pulling at him. When Joey's sister Edie sees more in Terry than he sees in himself, and Father Barry urges him on, Terry reassesses his past and begins to regain responsibility for his own actions. Marlon Brando, the lead in the film, only worked until 4 o'clock every day. This was actually in his contract. He did this so he could go see his psychiatrist analyst. Brando's mother had recently passed away, and this conflicted young actor was in therapy to try to resolve his issues that he had with his parents. On an interesting note, for the film's classic scene between Rod Steiger and Brando in the back seat of the cab, all of Steiger's close-ups were filmed after Brando had left for the day. So Brando's lines were read by one of the crew members. For many years, Rod Steiger, who had actually stayed during Brando's close-ups to help him put in a better performance, remained very bitter that Brando didn't return this favor. And he often mentioned this in interviews. Brando definitely had a way of ticking people off. He was a strange one. Elia Kazan originally intended to shoot this famous scene in the taxicab in a real cab, but Sam Spiegel opted instead to use a shabby old taxicab shell, and this was primarily done because the crucial rear projection equipment that they would have needed to film this the right way was not available for this shoot. Cameraman Boris Kaufman had put up a small Venetian blind across the window and used small flickering lights on the side of the cab to create the illusion that the vehicle was moving. That scene is one of the most famous scenes in cinema history, and it was not improvised like some people think. Initially, Brando started improvising, and Rod Steiger followed his lead. The director yelled at him, and he told Brando to stop it. After that, the two actors stuck to their original script as it was written. Now, it's said that the director used a real sly ploy to get Marlon Brando to do the movie. What he did was have Carl Malden direct a scene from the film with an up-and-coming fellow actor that was studying at the actor's studio. He played the role of Terry Malloy, the one they were trying to get Brando to fill. He figured that the competitive Brando would not be eager to see such a major role handed to a new screen heartthrob. That ploy worked, and he got him signed to the film. But the interesting side of this story is that competitive heartthrob came in the form of a guy named Paul Newman. Marlon Brando didn't like himself in this role at all once he saw the final product. The day he sat down to watch the completed picture, he felt terribly depressed by his performance, and he got up and left the screening room. He thought he was a complete failure, and he walked out without saying a word to the director at all. He felt completely embarrassed by his performance. The scene where Eva Marie Saint drops her glove and Marlon Brando stops and picks it up and puts it on her hand was completely unplanned. Saint dropped her glove accidentally in rehearsal, and Brando improvised the rest. The director loved the look of this, and he asked them to repeat it for the final take. Although the part of Edie Doyle properly is a lead, producer Sam Spiegel listed Eva Marie Saint as a supporting actress in hopes of getting her a nomination for an Academy Award. It worked. She won the Oscar. The idea for the film began with a series of articles written for the New York Sun by reporter Malcolm Johnson. These 24 stories won him a Pulitzer Prize, and they were reinforced by the 1948 murder of a New York dock hiring boss, which kind of woke America up to the killings and extortion that were epidemic on the New York waterfront. Bud Schulberg was captivated by this subject matter, and he devoted years of his life into absorbing everything he could about this subject matter. He became a regular fixture on the waterfront, interviewing longshoremen, union leaders, and getting to know the outspoken priest from St. Xavier's in Hell's Kitchen. Now, Thomas Hanley is the youngster that played Terry Malloy's teenage friend Tommy. He was hired by the production company to feed the pigeons on the set. His father was a longshoreman, and he had been blackballed for anti-union activities and went on to completely disappear when Hanley was 4 months old. The director decided to have him audition for the role that he was in, and they went on to really coax a lot of anger out of the youth by making fun of his father, actually calling him a rat at one time. He was paid $500 for this part, but he never really acted again. Now, the director readily admitted that he had real uneasy feelings about shooting on location near mafia-operated businesses and hangouts. Local hoods connected to the mob were constantly watching the production from the sidelines, and they would occasionally intimidate Kazan and his crew. Now, in the famous scene where Marlon Brando's character and Eva Marie Saint are talking on the rooftop of Terry's apartment building after he finds his pigeons killed, Terry looks off to his left, and with the next shot showing what he's looking at on the Hudson River with Manhattan in the distance. In that shot, you see a large ocean liner moving down the Hudson on its way out to sea. That ship is the new Italian liner Andrea Doria. It would be a little more than 2 years before this famous ship would sink in a collision with a Swedish liner, Stockholm, off of Martha's Vineyard. While 1,660 passengers and crew were rescued from the ill-fated ship and survived, 46 people died as a direct consequence of this collision. It eventually capsized and sank the following morning. The cause of the collision with the Stockholm and the loss of the Andrea Doria generated much interest in the media and many lawsuits. No determination of cause was ever formally published, although the greater part of the blame was thought to be on the Italian liner. But more recent data on the event shows both ships making errors that led to the collision. In December of 1954, Anthony DeVincio, who Bud Schulberg admitted was one of the many longshoremen with whom he had consulted while researching the story, went on to sue Sam Spiegel and Columbia Pictures for $1 million, claiming that his right of privacy had been invaded. The suit charged that details of his life were used in the creation of the character Terry, including his boxing past, his work as a Hoboken longshoreman, and his enthusiasm for pigeons, all this done without his consent. The suit was then settled out of court for $25,000 in June of 1956. If you've never seen On the Waterfront, you need to do yourself a favor and watch it. It's a really good film. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.